I'm really happy to be here, and I'm really excited to speak on a topic that I think is as yet emerging in the music industry, but I think is especially relevant in this really extreme situation we're in right now where live shows practically don't exist. And artists, event promoters, basically everyone in the music industry is trying to think of ways to close the gap in value that has resulted through purely digital means. And I do want to open this up to as many questions as possible towards the end. So just keep that in mind for anyone who's listening. So the topic for today is digital scarcity. And just to give some more background on how I'm thinking about this. So if you think about the way an artist makes money, whether it's just an artist who's just coming up, an emerging independent artist, or a major celebrity, I would say most of them make a significant amount of money, if not the majority of their money, from touring, from in-person touring. And the business model and the concept around touring is largely around an artist appearing in a given city only once or twice a year to give a performance that will never happen again and is nearly impossible to repeat or to replicate. And that's a really big part of why the concert and touring experience is so special, both for the artist and for the fan, who very often will pay good money to go see that artist. Especially if you're at the level of like a Beyonce or Taylor Swift, Ariana Grande. Fans often will pay hundreds or even thousands of dollars to get VIP treatment at these very rare and very scarce experiences. So that to me is one of the main reasons why touring is such an effective moneymaker for artists and for the music industry as a whole, because it's a form of physical scarcity built into this once-in-a-lifetime kind of experience. Now that entire revenue stream is off the table. And if you look at the digital media environment and digital music in particular, the vast majority of people are not paying for music streaming, let alone for a live streaming musical performance or other kind of live musical experience online. Much like the news, much like video, like on sites like YouTube, I think people have the expectation that online content is free and that it's everywhere and that it's ubiquitous. This kind of goes back to a very popular widespread concept that information wants to be free. A lot of people have taken that framing or that metaphor and applied it to music. Music wants to be free. Music wants to travel freely, at least online, in a streaming first environment. And so from my understanding now, in the COVID-19 pandemic, artists have been forced to shift from a low volume, high margin model of touring, where you only play a limited number of shows and you make a higher margin, at least compared to streaming or other forms of digital consumption income. And so that's low volume, high margin, offline, to now a high volume and low margin business model of just trying to be everywhere online, or as many places as possible online, making very little money in the process. You definitely see this in the case of live streaming, where how I and some other people have put it is that artists are now losing a lot of money because they can't tour. And in exchange for that, they feel pressured to release content online on a more regular basis, essentially for free. That's what you see a lot of artists doing on sites like Instagram and Twitch, especially. And so I and a lot of people in the industry, probably a lot of you listening here, don't think that's very sustainable in the long run. And so there's really good conversation happening now about what's next for live streaming, but also in general for sustainable digital economies around music. I think before, a lot of artists took for granted that there was kind of an album release to touring kind of cycle, where you can release your album on streaming and then be okay with the fact that you might not break even on it for a year or even 2 years, because you would then take that album on tour and hopefully make the money back, at least on the artist level, not the label level. But now that cycle, half of that is totally gone. So one really interesting question that's both like a good thought experiment and also I think it's very practical applications right now is how, if at all, you can continue that cycle and close that cycle in a digital only environment. And to bring it back to the topic of digital scarcity, that question could come in the form of what opportunities are out there to create forms of digital rather than physical scarcity, in an effort to potentially close the gap in value that now artists are facing more effectively through purely digital means. And we're still in really early stages for what that could look like in the music industry. And there are a couple of potential paths forward that I see in terms of models for digital scarcity in music, some of which are already pretty commonplace and are becoming a lot more popular. So if you think about what's scarce in music, like what is a scarce or rare experience or product that you can or cannot access as a music consumer, I break it down into more concrete objects and more intangible relationships. So I'll actually start with the relationship side, because I think that is actually more relevant. Not more relevant, but more commonplace and more widely adopted right now. So by relationships, I refer to like a rare relationship that an artist might have one-on-one with a fan. Especially if you're a diehard fan of an artist, a lot of what draws you to like engaging with them on social media or going to their show is the opportunity for access and for starting that relationship in a way that's really rare, especially for artists who might have like millions of followers and there's no way they can engage with all of them. And so in the touring, in the brick and mortar touring environment, often you would create that scarce experience around relationship building through fan meet and greets. That's a very standard practice, especially for artists of a certain caliber. But also all of those were canceled alongside the tour cancellations starting from early March. So there are a couple of emerging examples of platforms where you can recreate the fan meet and greet experience online. I'll just mention a couple of examples I've listed here. So one is called Looped. So there are two apps that are kind of similar. One is called Looped, like just the word Looped. There's another one called Chatalize, like chat, CHAT, Alize, like the end of analyze, ALYZE. Both of these apps are basically trying to create a digital infrastructure for virtual meet and greets. So there's like everything from a shared queue where fans can wait in line to chat with an artist virtually in a kind of like FaceTime like interface for anywhere from 1 minute to 5 minutes, depending on depending on parameters that the artist sets themselves. So it's customizable, which is great on the artist side. And in some of these apps, there's like a waiting room where fans can chat with each other or kind of share their excitement around the experience. And then a lot of these apps also have a shareable aspect in that after the fact, you can take like a screenshot of the video of your chat with the artist, or even record some of the video itself and then share it on social media. Different platforms will have different terms of that, but that's, I guess, one potential area of growth for this kind of experience is just the excitement around the social media content that comes out of it. So that's one model. I think apps like Cameo or platforms like Cameo are growing really significantly. So for those of you who don't know, Cameo is not a live meet and greet app, but it allows fans to pay any celebrity on the platform a set fee that the celebrity or artist sets to record a custom video. So that there are a lot of celebrities across film, TV, music, gaming, social media influencers. A lot of these celebrities across these industries charge anywhere from, I've seen like as low as $15 or as high as $200 to record. Like some of the most popular examples are like a custom birthday video. Say like your friend is a really big fan of this artist. You can pay this artist online, and ideally within 24, 48 hours, they'll come back with like a custom birthday video addressing your friend directly. So I know that model has been growing really significantly. That's more of like an on-demand access to like a scarce experience or a scarce product in this case, rather than a more like conversational experience. And finally, on the relationship front, in live streaming, we're gradually starting to see some artists, as well as fans and audiences, be comfortable with charging and paying for live streams. This kind of goes back to what I was talking about earlier about artists kind of like trying to churn out these live streams for free, realizing that that really is not sustainable for anybody, and now charging accordingly. So some examples, Erykah Badu partnered with this white label platform called Maestro, Maestro. They've historically worked with more music companies and organizations or like concert promoters, but are increasingly trying to work with artists as well, given the current situation. And she just charged, I believe, like only $1 or $2 for admission. But it still felt like it still felt scarce because you still had to pay to access that live stream experience. There are other apps, like I know a lot of creators are doing live streams on their Patreon pages. So Patreon's live streaming capability is powered by Crowdcast, which is another third-party or self-serve platform on which anyone can set up and start running their own paid live streams. And I've seen actually a couple of music companies running industry-related panels that are like ticketed or paid through Crowdcast. I think like Winston Baker, which is a conference company, has been running some webinars through that. So yeah, I expect to see that avenue grow a lot more as people try to recreate the intimacy and a scarcity of what would otherwise be like an in-person convention or an in-person concert or other kind of event online. So that covers the relationship side of things. The second part that I talked about are scarce objects. So if you think about scarce objects in the music industry or sources of scarcity where you can maybe charge a premium or make a higher margin on sales, usually that takes the form of merch or vinyl. Like you see a lot of artists releasing like special anniversary packs of their back catalog or other kinds of commemorative packages. And then artists, I've seen this especially in like the hip hop and electronic world. I would say Travis Scott is a great example of someone who's taken advantage of the scarcity possibilities around merch by like dropping very limited edition pieces of his own line. And so this part is still emerging in terms of what the digital analog looks like. There isn't really a culture around fans buying digitally scarce objects yet. And I think there are some technical reasons for that. One, any digital property I feel like is really easy to pirate, really easy to make copies of and spread. You've actually seen this over the past several years in the music streaming world, where people tried to manufacture scarcity through streaming exclusives. But then I think it was like Kanye West's The Life of Pablo, which was a Tidal exclusive, was also pirated like several hundreds of thousands of times, or it was downloaded illegally that number of times. And so no matter how much you try to engineer scarcity around a product, people, fans, audiences in general will find a way to obtain that somehow. And so interestingly, the last time I heard people seriously discussing digital scarcity, aside from, I guess, this context of streaming exclusives, was at the peak of hype around blockchain. So this, and based on my experience, was around like between like 2015, 2016 up to 2018. Every year, whether in like everyday industry conversation or at industry conferences, blockchain was a really hot topic. So sorry, I'm looking at the chat. Oh, okay. And I'll wrap this up quickly. So yeah, so like much of the conversation was around blockchain due to the power of the technology to be able to verify ownership and be able to track ownership in a much more transparent and mathematical way. And so you still see a lot of like visual art startups or fine art startups creating limited editions of digital artworks that were then tracked on some kind of decentralized ledger and could be traded for a price that was more transparent. You see that a bit in the fashion world as well. And last year, Warner Music Group invested in this blockchain company called Dapper Labs, which created this app called CryptoKitties, so that also like hints at the potential for limited edition digital merch and collectibles for artists. How are we doing on time? Have I run out of time?
You're just about at the end of time. I've been frantically
Okay.
putting all these great links in.
Yeah, I've seen that. Thank you.
And this has been wonderful. I think I missed one or two, and I'm also simultaneously, like a mad person, typing them into the Slack channel. So, Cherie, I don't know if you have time to meet with people over there.
Yeah, I'll definitely go in the Slack channel.
Migrate.
Yeah.
And also for everybody, we've got a Slack channel per conversation. So feel free to dip up and down the calendar to take a look at other people's thoughts and comments. The Slack channel will try to keep it up and live and all that fun stuff. As the videos come out, so they also can be companion pieces. One of the challenges with Zoom webinar chat is it goes poof at the end of the session, and so if you grab it or whatever, but you suddenly think, wait a minute here, who is that person who made that great comment? If people would like to get a hold of you, thank you very much for doing this. I appreciate it. I know this is
Yeah,
where
of course.
your
Yeah.
thoughts are percolating right now. How can they get a hold of you other than they should follow your podcast and Water and Music newsletter and all the work you do? Is there a way they should get a hold of you? And is there anything you need right now?
Thank you for asking. Yeah, so best way to get a hold of me is probably on Twitter or LinkedIn. If you just look up my name, I should come up towards the top. My Twitter handle is at Cherie Hu 42, numbers 42. And things I need right now, I'm very interested in getting more concrete numbers around the activity around live streaming and other kinds of online music experiences. There seem to be very kind of like one-off sharing with respect to stats, but I'm really interested in getting a clear picture of like aggregate activity. So if anyone has that, that would be great.
And we had a live streaming panel about 3 panels ago, so that will have some in it.
Okay.
And I don't know if you're also hanging out with any of the Music Tectonics sessions that they're doing, but some folks have dropped some good numbers there that were interesting. So lots of people trying to match make the experience right now to try to get the stuff to work. So Cherie, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you
I'm
as
doing
well.
a combination of jazz hands or clicking so you can see things in the screen here to make that go live. I was actually looking at CryptoKitties and getting incredibly confused. So I'll leave that for everybody else in the chat. I have 3 young adult children and they're finding all this stuff and they send me something. I'm like, what the heck was that? And of course, all my students at UCLA.